Alright, what's going on everybody? Hope this video finds you well. Got a really cool topic here. Why is your golf swing steep? We're going to go into cause and effect based on our forearm movements. So why is our golf swing steep? How do the forearms, or how can the forearms basically help us change or worsen the golf club steepening or planing out right there. So before we get into that, if you haven't checked out the last video that I did, click that link down below. I've also got a free crash course, Understanding Impact. Would love to have you check that out. Also, let's dive right into it. So when we look at players that struggle with being steep, okay, so there are players that I see that get the golf club very on plane here, and the club comes down like this, and the club comes down like this. Now, we could say it could be a rotation piece, it could be a wrist condition, ulnar, radial, it could be all that. The place that we're going to dive into, and we're going to shed a little bit more light on, is what the actual forearms do and how that can have and how that can change maybe the pitch or the look of what the actual shaft does. So I think the first thing when we start off with this is, what do the forearms actually have the ability to do? So what can they do? So a forearm movement is going to stem from the elbow joint. It's not going to be a shoulder movement. So all we're going to focus on right here is we're going to focus on the movement of the forearm. So when you look at this, this is how I started to comprehend anatomical terminology better. Is if we look at pronation, so if you hold your thumb straight up here, if we look at pronation, pronation would be moving towards the midline, and that would be with both hands, so moving towards midline. And I would call this position 1. Straight up would be neutral, this would be position 2, and as we go into supination, this would be forearm up, or a doctor I was working with, he explained it as holding a cup of soup right there. So if you're holding a cup of soup, that would be supination here. So we would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we can do that on both sides. So thumbs in towards midline. This would be 1, neutral is straight up and down, and this would be 3. So 2, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay? So I think it becomes a lot easier as well when we start coding a lot of times, when we code anatomical terminology versus saying, let's go into pronation of this, supination of that, yada, yada, yada. A lot of times for the players that don't comprehend a lot of anatomy, this can be easier. So when we look at the player that is steep, so one of the things that I like to do, one as a teacher in helping players understand, is number one, what are the forearms doing if we are steep, okay? So if we went here, this would be steep. So if I turned and I faced this right here, we would say my thumbs, both of my thumbs are up. This one is moving the direction of supination, or moving the direction of 3, and this is moving closer to the direction of 1. So if we go here and I go into my backswing and down, this right here, this would be steep right here. So that is going to be our forearms rotating this way. Okay, so that is our forearms moving this direction. So as I'm right here, forearms moving this direction, downswing here, this is what we would refer to, or we would call steep here. Because now we either we have to shallow it late, time this, or B, we just keep going that direction and we are out to in, hit poles, sometimes hit fades, sometimes hit slices. So one of the easiest ways for me to actually comprehend this, and we're going to do this from a neutral grip standpoint, is what actually forms a plane. So swing planes are obviously going to change, let's say 45 to 50 degrees, just for an easy mathematical purpose. Sometimes they move upwards of 60, even wedges, they might be a little bit higher than that, but let's say for an easy mathematical standpoint, we need it to be around 45 to 50 degrees. I think that'll be easier for everybody to comprehend this right here. So if we go thumbs straight up and down, we're going to call this 90. Okay, so this right here would be 90. If I took my right forearm, my trail forearm, and I rotated this 45, and I took my lead forearm and I rotated this in at 45, this is basically, this is the direction that I need the golf club to be on the way back and on the way down with the forearms here. Okay, so that would be our forearm movement for this golf club to start to create a plane. So if this was right in here, and let's say this started at 50 degrees right here, let's say 45 degrees. Well, if I was up in here and I rotated these 45 degrees, this would now work closer to perpendicular to what my spine would be right here. This would be my spine angle, okay? So if I went here, rotated, we could see this shaft angle is perpendicular to what my back line is. When we see players steepen this, this shaft starts moving closer to what the player's back line is, and this is where we have to change something. So when we look at what the forearms need to be doing, we need them to be moving. Again, this would be position 2, position 2. So anything towards midline is going to be position 1 for what we're talking about in regards to anatomical terminology. So this would be going into pronation, and we're going to be going halfway. So this would be 2, this would be 1 all the way. That's right in between. Okay, so we'll call this 1.5. This is at 2. Now it would be moving towards 3, but not all the way. Kind of a halfway point right there. Okay, so we would call this one 2.5. Lead arm would be 1.5. So trail arms 2.5. This would be at 1.5. So from here, if I start off neutral grip, thumbs are almost straight down the grip, and I go takeaway. Now from here, I'm going to start to move the forearms to where they would form. They would form this plane right here, and that club is getting more perpendicular to my back line. Work this up, work this back down, and there's impact. Now what's neat about this is we can actually turn this into kind of a pump drill. So when we turn this into a pump drill, what I would say is we would go take away, rotate this to about a 45 now, and we're going to work on feeling how we could keep this at a 45 and then return it to impact. So I'd go right here, take away, flip this to a 45, the arms are still against the chest, pump this a few times, and then we would hit. So here's what this would look like. So I'd go take away, flip this to a 45, swing it back, pump once, pump twice, and then I would go hit right there. And I think one of the first places that we need to actually be with something like this, we need to know what the heck it feels like, because if you're the person that's been really steep, man, this is going to feel like this club is way the heck behind us because of the direction, the directional movements of where we have the forearm. So firstly, we need to go into a comprehension of what do we need the forearms to do. I think that's the most important part of learning, is comprehending what it is that we need to do. Secondly, we need to go into what does it feel like now, and what does it feel like in a motion. Thirdly, then we can start to implement that right there. So then we can go into the implementation process of it. Then we have to know what to check. We need to be able to analyze it. So a good place to analyze it, take away here, golf club is it's about perpendicular to the spine. We'd pump this, and then we would go from there. So I think that would give us a really good reference, a really good starting place for where we actually need the golf club to be from a forearm position movement. Again, 1, 2, 3. 1 is towards midline, 2 is neutral, 3 would be away from the body right there, or away from midline. Okay, so we need the lead forearm to go here, trail forearm to go here. That would be at about 45 degrees, and that would be where we want to see the forearms positioned throughout our motion so that we could keep the golf club right there relatively on plane. I hope that educates you a little bit about pronation, supination, and how you can actually use that in your motion. So if you have any questions, you need anything at all from me, please leave those in the comments down below. I will be sure to get back to each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.